to Chung. Good evening. Housing Secretary Jack Kemp took a bold step today, setting himself apart from President Bush. It has to do with the economy, and what's behind it can probably be found in election year politics. White House correspondent Randall Pinkston has the story.
It's highly unusual for members of the president's cabinet to publicly contradict him on important issues. But growing political fallout over the economy is prompting insiders like Housing Secretary Jack Kemp to put some distance between Mr. Bush's optimistic view of the recession and the economic hardship facing millions of American voters.
It is not recession. It does not fit the definition of recession.
This economy, while technically perhaps out of recession, it's limping, it's anemic, and it needs some oxygen in the body economic to create more jobs, to create more growth.
Although Kemp agrees with the president's push for a capital gains tax cut, he believes there is room for compromise with Democrats who want to help hard-pressed middle-income Americans.
What we need is a broadly based reduction in tax rates on capital, labor, the family, and the poor.
Unhappiness with the economy is playing out at the voting booth. That's the spin political analysts are giving to last week's election in Pennsylvania, where former Attorney General Dick Thornburgh lost his bid for the Senate.
This is the most unfocused White House that I've seen in a long time. And when you see a good Republican like Jack Kemp making that point, Bob, that is an indication that there's real alarm within the Republican Party about 1992.
We need a strategy. We need to get this thing going. Democrats are going to have a serious campaign, whoever their nominee is, and I think you can't take anything for granted.
Kemp expressed a view that seems to be gaining supporters among Republicans and Democrats. Now is the time to try to stimulate the economy, because voters will forgive politicians for trying and failing, but won't forgive them for not trying at all. Randall Pinkston, CBS News, the White House.
An Atlantic storm is battering the northeast coast tonight, just 2 weeks after another storm hit the same region. The National Weather Service says the storm was caused by a strong low-pressure system off the South Carolina coast. James Hattori has more details.
Waves as high as 14 feet pounded the North Carolina shoreline this weekend, flooding areas barely dry from the violent storm which swept through the same area on Halloween. Houses in the largely summer resort towns were buffeted again. At least one was knocked down. In Norfolk, Virginia, floodwaters were reported as high as 3 feet, overwhelming storm drains. Forecasters say this weather system is especially threatening because protective sand dunes and other shoreline barriers were washed away by the Halloween storm.
The second storm, while it's not as strong, can do more damage because, number one, it's closer to the coast, and secondly, you don't have the protective works there to keep the water from flooding areas.
The storm system is expected to continue moving northward tonight. Strongest winds should blow into Cape Cod on the coast of Massachusetts overnight, moving on to Canada by midweek. Fierce winds in advance of the system are already stirring up swells along the New Jersey shore, smashing seawalls, spilling over, and flooding roads.
This is the worst I've ever seen it over here. Yesterday, the homeowners were allowed to go down and secure their houses, but today, because of the storm, we're not allowing that.
Experts say the storm system, which weakened somewhat today, is expected to regain strength tonight, the second storm to hit early in what is forecast to be a wetter than normal season. James Hattori, CBS News, New York.
Still ahead on the CBS Evening News, the debate over a plan to open up some veterans hospitals to non-veterans. And Bill Geist tries to alleviate the burdens of autumn.
As beneficial as self-examination is, Mary Brody won't feel the tiny lump in her breast for another 2 years. But she'll discover it tomorrow, after her first mammogram, thanks in part to a new X-ray film created by DuPont that makes it safer to start mammography early. And for Mary, early detection means a 2-year head start on the rest of her life. At DuPont, we make the things that make a difference.
I'm alive, Jeff Hashimoto.
I'm alive, Rhonda Williamson.
I'm alive, Sonia Schofield.
I'm alive, Howard Weber.
Want to get more out of life?
I'm alive, Jessica Weber.
Get airbags. See your Allstate agent for a list of cars with airbags.
We're alive.
Dean Witter believed in listening.
Listen, not only to what our clients say, but what they mean. Each client has a level of comfort. Endeavor to find it. We measure success one investor at a time.
We bake pearls made of denture material in this blueberry pie to prove how powerfully Efferdent, America's leading denture cleanser, removes this tough stain, even in between. Efferdent, stronger than stains.
Secretary of State James Baker today launched a trip to the Far East that will take him to 3 countries, each stop important in its own way. Here with our report is State Department correspondent Bill Plante. Bill?
Well, Connie, that's right. The president may be at home for a while because of the political concerns he has, but the Secretary of State is still on the road overseas. Baker arrived in Tokyo today, first stop on a week-long visit to Asia. He and Mr. Bush have been here hardly at all in the last 3 years, and now the president's upcoming trip has been put off because of domestic politics.
But even to postpone it certainly sends the wrong signal to Asia that Europe was more important. He did not cancel his trip to Rome. He did cancel a trip to Asia. And that's a fact that people in Japan and probably elsewhere will not forget for a while.
All the more explaining for Baker to do at a time when fundamental differences between the U.S. and Japan over trade policy, technology, and basic economic structure are coming to a head.
In this country now, as you all know, the polls show that we American people see Japan as a rising economic threat to this country.
But guess what? It's become a two-way street.
There's a return to a fair amount of contempt for American economic performance and a belief that we're just not as good as the Japanese.
On top of that, Baker can expect to find a good deal of Japanese anxiety about the 50th anniversary of Pearl Harbor.
The Japanese are very worried that it will become the opening of a new season of Japan bashing.
A special commission of diplomats and business people has just released a report suggesting several answers. Japan, they say, must assume a greater international role so the U.S. can devote more of its GNP to its domestic problems. It must also buy more foreign goods. Their prescription for the U.S. is even stronger medicine: more savings, more research, better education, and reduction of the federal budget deficit.
I think both sides have to temper the rhetoric and find a better way to negotiate the kind of disputes that are going to be with us throughout this decade and into the next century.
The other big question hanging over Washington's relations with Japan and all the rest of Asia is the U.S. military presence there. Now that the Soviets are no longer perceived to be a threat in Asia, just as in Europe, people in this country are asking, should the U.S. foot the bill continuously for everyone else's defense? Connie?
Thank you, Bill. After Japan, Baker goes on to South Korea. Then on Friday, he'll become the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit China since the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown. Ever since that crackdown, the government has been trying to polish the public perception of soldiers and students alike. Bill Witter in Beijing has more.
A lot has changed in China in 2 years. These students aren't hoisting protest banners or handing out political leaflets. They've volunteered to raise money for the millions of victims of China's devastating summer floods. We're doing it not only for the disaster, one volunteer said, but to give students a new image.
The more we can give our heart out, the more our people will understand us.
China's worst flooding in 3 decades killed almost 2,000 people and washed out another 200 million. But this natural disaster proved to be a PR bonanza for the government. The People's Liberation Army, whose reputation was shattered after it shot down the pro-democracy movement, was sent to the rescue. Since July, government TV has been showing the PLA working tirelessly, trying to rebuild the people's lives and win back the people's hearts.
The PLA are the brothers and sons of the people, and their hearts are linked with the hearts of the people in the disaster area.
The government has a lot at stake. Many Chinese still believe natural calamities are a sign of the gods' displeasure with the nation's rulers. The present communist leadership is hoping a successful relief effort not only will polish the army's image, but its own. As for today's students, when they're not volunteering to help the nation, you're likely to find them marching in formation. Military training has been a required course since another group of students marched in protest across Tiananmen Square in 1989. But But the days of pro-democracy activism are gone now. These days, happy communist officials congratulate happy, socially responsible students. We want to help our nation, this young woman told us. It seems this class of Chinese students has learned its lesson well. Bill Witter, CBS News, Beijing.
The first members of a UN peacekeeping force arrived today in Cambodia. The Australian soldiers will set up communications among the rival factions that have agreed to end Cambodia's long civil war. An American diplomat arrives tomorrow to reopen the U.S. Embassy after 16 years. In a laboratory in southern England this weekend, a brief burst of electrical power marked a major breakthrough in energy research. Scientists there say they've produced the first significant amount of power from controlled nuclear fusion. Barry Peterson has more.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
It was, as everyone hoped and a few prayed, a brilliant step toward a brave new world. And on the monitor, the gleaming proof of success, sustained nuclear fusion.
This is a great success, It's up to our best expectations, so we're very pleased with it.
The reactor, which looks rather like a giant donut, is called torus, Greek for endless vessel. And that's the appeal of fusion, that it may supply endless amounts of electricity, cheaply and cleanly. Fusion powers the sun, and the hydrogen fuel on Earth comes from a convenient source, the hydrogen and water, energy as close as the nearest faucet. It has the promise, without the problems, of conventional nuclear power. In that process, highly enriched uranium is broken down, and afterwards, the spent fuel is radioactive for centuries. In fusion, everything burns within the reactor, so there is no radioactive waste. The Europeans, who funded the billions in research, are crowing about their success.
The scientists from 14 European countries, including Britain, are now significantly ahead of American and Japanese rivals.
An American scientist who watched the experiment could only play the role of good sport.
We're very excited to see the first fusion power really generated in one of these devices. It gives us a big surge of confidence we're on the right track.
It will cost billions more to develop a commercial fusion reactor. It's expected to be a worldwide effort, and it may also take 50 years of similar experiments before such a reactor lights the dawn of a new energy. Barry Peterson, CBS News, London.
Russian President Boris Yeltsin today backed down and withdrew hundreds of troops from a breakaway, mainly Muslim enclave in the Caucasus. Yeltsin has declared emergency rule in the region.
Once again, Buick is raising the banner for quality in America. Introducing the 1992 LeSabre with a higher level of power, safety, security, and convenience. This new LeSabre is going to be one tough act to follow. LeSabre for 1992 from Buick.
Dear Folgers, I run a bed and breakfast. When I overslept one morning, the Folgers switch saved my reputation. The percolator wasn't even set up, so I secretly switched Folgers crystals for the brewed coffee I normally serve.
This is delicious.
Well, the taste and aroma must have fooled them, because they were shocked when I revealed the switch and joked about sounding like one of your restaurant commercials.
Folgers crystals, proven with fresh brewed coffee drinkers.
Sincerely, Janet Turley. Thank you.
This is regular. This is better. This Bayer is regular, but for headaches, Anacin is better. This is regular. This is better. This Bufferin is regular, but for headaches, Anacin is better. What makes Anacin better? It's simple. Regular Bayer and Bufferin have one ingredient for pain, but Anacin has two ingredients, an effective pain medicine plus a second ingredient that makes Anacin work better. For headache relief, get Anacin. Get better.
I was dreaming that I woke up, turned on the TV, and my afternoon soap stars were on. And guess what? Starting Monday, they will be on in the morning on CBS This Morning. It's breakfast for your head.
Tomorrow is Veterans Day, but the occasion was marked one day early in downtown San Antonio. Residents there paid special tribute to prisoners of war and those missing in action at a replica of Washington's Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Veterans groups say the government is not spending enough for their medical care, and they're worried that a new program might undercut what services they already have. They commemorated the day early at the Veterans Hospital in Tuskegee, Alabama, a rural area with no civilian hospital and some empty VA beds. A controversial pilot project may soon be opening this hospital's doors to some non-veterans.
The purpose is to provide an extension of medical care in areas where it would not be available.
Deep breath in.
Under the plan, other rural VA hospitals like Tuskegee, all underutilized because of a declining veterans population and stricter eligibility rules, would provide inpatient and outpatient care to poor non-veterans. But that doesn't mean, the VA says, that service to eligible vets would suffer.
By the fact that we will be participating in this demonstration project will not alter those services. We'll continue to provide those services to those veterans.
But a lot of veterans like World War II vet Clarence Goad think that's just hogwash.
Once you start letting them in any direction, as the old statement says, if you crack the foundation, the wall will fall.
We don't think VA has the capacity to adequately serve the veterans that's required to serve if they add any civilians, any non-veterans from rural areas.
But the VA argues that the bill for non-veterans would be paid entirely by Medicaid, Medicare, and the Indian Health Service. And it claims that admitting non-veterans will help improve the service and quality of care to veterans.
It will increase our case mix. So doing, our physician will become more efficient in their practice.
Maybe so, say veterans, but what about the future?
They're going to continue to push us until they're going to push us right on out. If we go ahead and take this line down, there won't be any VA medical facilities 5 years from now, per se.
But that's exactly what the VA says it's trying to prevent.
If we want to justify keeping all of our facilities, which I think we should, then we would have to effectively serve the medical needs of more than just veterans.
The Veterans Administration is expected to decide within a month which hospitals will be part of the pilot program. As many as 5 hospitals may begin serving non-veterans by early next year.
Can a razor cut your beard off below the skin without the blades even touching your face? It can if it's a Norelco. Norelco's patented lift and cut system lifts the hair, so when it's cut, it can actually drop below skin level without the blades even touching your face. Are you getting a shave this incredibly close and exceptionally comfortable? You are when you shave with Norelco. Norelco, we make close comfortable.
Can't believe he broke it.